The Gulfstream G650 couldn't land fast enough. Alexander Sterling checked his Rolex for the 5th time in 2 minutes, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack molars. The board meeting started in 47 minutes, and he was still 30,000 feet above Miami with a merger hanging in the balance. His wolf was pacing beneath his skin, restless and agitated by the time crunch. He should have known better than to trust Jenkins with the Seattle negotiations. Now Sterling Industries' biggest deal of the year teetered on the edge because his supposedly reliable VP couldn't close a simple acquisition without holding Alex's hand through every decimal point. The plane touched down with a slight bump, and Alex was already unbuckling his seatbelt before they'd come to a complete stop. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Sterling, your driver is waiting at the usual pickup point. The board has been notified of your delay." "Tell them 15 minutes, Alex growled, grabbing his briefcase and striding toward the exit the moment the door opened. Miami International Airport hit him like a wall of chaos. The terminal buzzed with the usual symphony of rolling luggage, crying babies, and departure announcements in 3 languages. Alex's heightened senses, already on edge from stress, picked up every overwhelming scent and sound as he power-walked through the corridor. He rounded the corner toward the main terminal, phone pressed to his ear as he barked instructions to his legal team, when disaster struck in the most spectacular way possible. The chow cart never saw him coming. Alex's shoulder clipped the corner of the mobile food stand with the force of a freight train. The elderly vendor let out a surprised yelp as his entire inventory launched into the air like sugary confetti. Churros rained down like cinnamon-dusted missiles, followed by an explosion of melted chocolate sauce that splattered across everything within a 10-foot radius, including Alex's pristine Armani suit. "Dios mío," the vendor cried, wringing his hands as churros continued to bounce off the terminal floor like edible tumbleweeds. Alex stood frozen, chocolate dripping from his collar, phone dangling from his hand as his legal team's distant voices asked if he was still there. A glob of dulce de leche slid down his cheek and plopped onto his Italian leather shoes. That's when he heard it. A laugh. Rich and musical, with just the slightest hint of a snort at the end, the kind of laugh that used to make his wolf purr with contentment. The kind he hadn't heard in 5 years but would recognize in his sleep. His head snapped up, and there she was. Isabella Rodriguez stood about 15 feet away, one hand pressed to her mouth in a futile attempt to contain her mirth, dark eyes sparkling with the same mischief that used to drive him crazy in all the best ways. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore simple jeans and a yellow sundress that made her look like walking sunshine. She was just as beautiful as the day she'd walked out of his life. But it wasn't Bella who made his wolf suddenly sit up and take notice with laser focus. It was the 2 small figures flanked on either side of her, both approximately 4 feet tall and currently covered head to toe in chow sugar. Twin children. A boy and a girl. The little girl had Bella's warm brown eyes and wild curls, but the stubborn set of her jaw was pure Sterling. The boy was lankier, with the same dark hair as his sister, but his eyes. Alex's wolf let out a sound somewhere between a whimper and a howl. Those were his eyes. Storm gray and already showing signs of the Sterling family's trademark intensity, even on a 4-year-old face. The scent hit him a heartbeat later. Pack. Family. His cubs. The realization slammed into him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and making his knees feel suspiciously unsteady. He had children. Twins. And Bella had never told him. Before his brain could fully process this earth-shattering revelation, the little girl tugged on Bella's dress with a sticky hand, her voice carrying clear as a bell across the terminal chaos. "Mama, why does the messy man smell like wet dog?" Several nearby travelers turned to stare, and Alex felt his face burn with embarrassment that had nothing to do with being covered in dessert. Out of the mouths of babes. His wolf scent was apparently strong enough for even human children to pick up on, especially children who shared his bloodline. Bella's face went 3 shades paler, her eyes widening in unmistakable panic as she followed her daughter's pointing finger straight to Alex. She opened her mouth, probably to offer some explanation or hustle the kids away, but she never got the chance. The boy, Lucas, his mind supplied somehow, though he had no idea how he knew that, had apparently decided that a chocolate-covered man in the middle of an airport was the most interesting playground equipment he'd ever encountered. "You're like the tallest tree ever," Lucas announced with 4-year-old enthusiasm, and before anyone could stop him, he launched himself at Alex's legs with the single-minded determination of a tiny missile. Small arms wrapped around Alex's knees, and suddenly there was a miniature person attempting to scale him like he was indeed a piece of jungle gym equipment. Sticky fingers grabbed at his suit jacket as Lucas hauled himself upward with impressive determination. "Lucas, no!" Bella yelped, rushing forward. "Get down right now." But Lucas was having none of it. He'd made it as far as Alex's belt and showed no signs of slowing down. "I'm climbing the tree. Emmy, look how high I can go." The little girl, Emma, clapped her sugar-covered hands in delight. "Me too. Me too." And suddenly Alex found himself under assault by two very small, very sticky children while their mother frantically tried to detach them and apologize to both him and the show vendor simultaneously. "I'm so sorry," Bella babbled, trying to unwrap Lucas from Alex's torso while simultaneously preventing Emma from joining the climbing expedition. "Kids, we don't climb on strangers." "Lucas, I mean it, get down this instant." But Lucas had discovered that Alex's tie made an excellent rope, and he was now hanging from it like a tiny, determined monkey. Alex reached up instinctively to steady the boy before he could fall, and found himself staring directly into gray eyes that were unmistakably his own. "Hi, tree man," Lucas said cheerfully, chocolate smeared across his cheek. "You're really tall. Are you a giant?" Alex's throat felt like sandpaper. No, I'm not a giant." "Are you sure? You're way taller than Mama, and she's the tallest person I know." Emma had given up on climbing and was now patting Alex's chocolate-stained pants with scientific curiosity. "You're all sticky like us now. Did you fall in the candy too?" "Something like that," Alex managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Bella finally succeeded in extracting Lucas from his tie and was now holding both children firmly by the hands, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. Her eyes met his for the first time, and Alex saw 1,000 emotions flicker through them: fear, guilt, protectiveness, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "We should go," she said quickly, tugging the twins away from him. "Come on, niños, we're going to miss our flight." But Emma dug in her heels, still staring at Alex with curious eyes. "Mama, why are you scared of the tree man? He smells familiar." Alex's wolf practically howled at that innocent observation. Of course she could smell the connection. They were his cubs, his pack, and pack always recognized pack, even when they were too young to understand what it meant. Bella's grip on the children's hands tightened. "We really need to go." Alex stood there, dripping chocolate and covered in show crumbs, watching his children, as Bella prepared to disappear from his life for the second time. His phone was still buzzing with calls from his legal team. The board meeting was now less than 30 minutes away, and he was pretty sure there was dulce de leche in his hair. But none of that mattered. Because he was a father. And Bella had kept his cubs from him for 5 years. The show vendor was still muttering in Spanish and sweeping up cinnamon sugar debris. Airport security was starting to notice the commotion, and Lucas was making another break for Alex's legs while Emma announced to anyone within hearing distance that the tree man smells like home. Alex opened his mouth, not sure what he was going to say but knowing he couldn't let them just walk away. Not this time. Not when he'd just discovered the most important thing in his world. But the words never came. Because Bella was already pulling the twins toward the departure gates, casting one last panicked look over her shoulder as she fled. Again. And Alex stood frozen in the middle of Miami International Airport, covered head to toe in airport food, watching his family disappear into the crowd while his wolf howled in anguish and his human brain tried to process the fact that everything he thought he knew about his life had just been turned upside down by 2 4-year-olds and a show cart. His phone buzzed again. The board meeting. The merger. Sterling Industries. None of it seemed to matter anymore. He had cubs. And he was going to get them back. Chapter 2. The Sterling Industries board meeting was a complete disaster. Alex had shown up 23 minutes late, still reeking of churros and chocolate, with what appeared to be cinnamon sugar embedded in his eyebrows. He'd mumbled through his presentation about quarterly projections while his mind replayed the image of two gray eyes staring up at him trustingly. The merger deal collapsed spectacularly when he accidentally called the potential acquisition target Emma instead of Emerald Technologies 3 times in a row. His CFO had pulled him aside afterward to ask if he needed medical attention. Now, 4 hours later, Alex stood in his penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay, still wearing his destroyed suit, staring at his laptop screen like it held the secrets of the universe. Which, arguably, it did. How to be a father when you didn't know you were a father. Google's search suggestions were less than helpful. How to be a good father yielded 847 million results, most of which seemed to assume he'd had at least 9 months to prepare for this moment. How to connect with children you've never met brought up articles about adoption and custody battles that made his wolf pace anxiously. He tried a different approach: how to talk to 4-year-olds. The first result was a WikiHow article with illustrations of a smiling man crouched down to child level, demonstrating active listening techniques. Alex studied the cartoon figure's open body language and practiced the pose in front of his floor-to-ceiling windows. "Hello, children," he said to his reflection, attempting what the article called an approachable smile. His wolf whined. He looked deranged. "Hi there, kids. It's me, your dad." The word felt foreign in his mouth. Dad. Father. He'd never even considered the possibility. His own father had been a distant figure who communicated primarily through disappointed silence and the occasional critique of quarterly reports. The Sterling men weren't known for their nurturing instincts. A soft cough behind him made him spin around. Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper of 12 years, stood in the doorway holding a steaming cup of tea and wearing the carefully neutral expression she reserved for his more eccentric moments. "Mr. Alex," she said gently, "are you feeling all right? You've been talking to the window for 10 minutes. Heat crept up his neck. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Just practicing." "Practicing for what?" She set the tea on his coffee table and studied him with the shrewd eyes that had raised 5 children of her own. Alex hesitated. Mrs. Chen was discreet, loyal, and had never once questioned his more unusual habits, like his tendency to pace the penthouse during full moons or his preference for extremely rare steaks. If anyone could help him navigate this situation. "I found out today that I have children," he said quietly. Mrs. Chen blinked exactly once. Then she sat down heavily on his Italian leather sofa, her hand pressed to her chest. "Children? How many children?" "Twins. 4 years old. Boy and girl." She was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "And you're just learning about them now?" "Their mother and I, it's complicated." Alex ran a hand through his hair, dislodging what he suspected was more CHO debris. "I need to learn how to be a father. Fast." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "Mr. Alex, parenting is not like running a business. You cannot create a strategy and expect immediate results." But Alex was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through Amazon's parenting section. There have to be best practices. Research. Data. Within 30 minutes, he'd ordered 17 books with titles like Toddler 411, The Whole Brain Child, and How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen. He'd also added a collection of educational toys, child-safe furniture, and something called a busy board that claimed to develop fine motor skills. Mrs. Chen watched this shopping frenzy with growing alarm. "Mr. Alex, perhaps you should slow down." "I need to convert the office," Alex said, already striding toward his home workspace. "Make it child-friendly. They might visit. They should visit. I should have visitation rights." He paused in the doorway, hit by a sudden, crushing realization. What if they don't like me? Mrs. Chen appeared at his elbow with another cup of tea, this one suspiciously calming scented. "Children are simple creatures, Mr. Alex. They want love, attention, and consistency. Not charts and graphs." But Alex was already envisioning the transformation. His sleek home office, with its glass desk and minimalist design, would become a father command center. He'd create schedules for bonding activities, research age-appropriate conversation topics, and develop a systematic approach to building relationships with Lucas and Emma. The name sent his wolf into a contented rumble. His cubs had names, faces, personalities. Emma with her scientific curiosity and Lucas with his fearless climbing instincts. They were real, and they were his. His laptop chimed with a new email marked urgent from his assistant about the failed merger, but Alex closed it without reading. Sterling Industries had managed without him for centuries. It could survive a few more days while he figured out how to be a father. He pulled up a new browser window and typed, "What do 4-year-olds like to eat?" 3 miles away in a cozy Coral Gables apartment, Bella Rodriguez was having what could generously be called a complete emotional breakdown. "Okay, but like, on a scale of 1 to completely screwed," Sofia Martinez said, not looking up from her ring light setup, "how bad are we talking?" Bella gestured helplessly at the chaos surrounding them. What had been a normal living room that morning now resembled something between a greenhouse and a jungle expedition gone wrong. The pothose plants had tripled in size, their vines crawling across the ceiling like green tentacles. The fiddle leaf fig in the corner was now tall enough to require a stepladder for watering, and the succulents on the windowsill were threatening to burst from their pots entirely. "The plants haven't been this bad since the twins were born," Bella said, pacing between towers of vegetation. Every step made the floorboards creak under the weight of supersized planters. Sophia finally looked up from adjusting her TikTok setup, took one look around the apartment, and let out a low whistle. "Girl, you are stressed. Like, Amazon rainforest stressed." As if summoned by her words, a philodendron unfurled a new leaf the size of a dinner plate. "Where are Emma and Lucas?" Sophia asked, pulling out her phone to start recording. "Watching Bluey at my mom's." I needed time to think. Bella slumped onto the couch, which was now partially obscured by the sprawling branches of what used to be a modest snake plant. He saw them, Soph. He looked right at them, and I could see him putting it together. Sophia positioned her phone for the perfect angle, her TikTok instincts kicking in even during crisis management. "Okay, spill everything. And I mean everything, because my followers are going to eat this drama up. You are not putting my life crisis on TikTok." "I'm absolutely putting your life crisis on TikTok. But I'll make it a hypothetical friend situation." Sophia hit record and immediately slipped into her social media persona. "Hey, spell seekers. Your girl Sophia here with another episode of Spells and Tells, and today we're talking about what happens when your past literally crashes into your present. Hypothetically speaking, of course." She turned back to Bella, who was now stress-eating leftover churros. Apparently the twins had insisted on buying some after their airport adventure. "Start from the beginning. The actual beginning." Bella closed her eyes and let herself remember. 5 years ago, when she'd been young and stupid and completely head over heels for a man who turned into a wolf during full moons. 5 years earlier. The first time Alexander Sterling kissed her, Bella had accidentally made every flower in the hotel garden bloom at once. It was March in Miami, and she'd been working as an event coordinator for one of his company's charity galas. He'd been everything she should have avoided: powerful, wealthy, and carrying himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about rent money. But when he'd smiled at her across the ballroom and asked her to dance, her magic had hummed with approval. Their courtship had been a whirlwind of expensive restaurants, weekend trips to the Keys, and conversations that lasted until sunrise. Alex had been surprisingly down-to-earth for a billionaire, with a dry sense of humor and an unexpected gentleness when he held her. He'd never questioned why her apartment looked like a botanical garden or why she always seemed to know when storms were coming. For 3 months, Bella had allowed herself to believe in fairy tales. Then she'd met his mother. Margaret Sterling was the kind of woman who could freeze a room with a single glance. Tall, elegant, and utterly ruthless, she'd summoned Bella to afternoon tea at the Sterling family estate like a queen granting audience to a peasant. "Miss Rodriguez," she'd said, not bothering with pleasantries, "I understand you've been spending time with my son." "Yes, ma'am." Bella had worn her best dress and still felt underdressed in the Sterling family's palatial living room. Alexander is heir to a considerable fortune and responsibility. The Sterling family has certain expectations for his future wife. The word wife had sent a flutter of hope through Bella's chest, quickly crushed by Margaret's next words. You are not suitable. The dismissal had been delivered with the casual cruelty of someone swatting a fly. Margaret Sterling didn't raise her voice or make threats. She simply laid out the facts. Bella was common, poor, uneducated, and completely wrong for her son. She had 1 week to end the relationship voluntarily, or Margaret would ensure she disappeared from Alex's life permanently. I have resources, Miss Rodriguez. Connections. It would be unfortunate if your immigration status came under scrutiny, or if your little catering business encountered difficulties with health inspectors. Bella's magic had reacted to the threat like a living thing, every plant in the Sterling estate straining toward the windows as if seeking escape. Margaret had noticed, her eyes narrowing with sudden interest. Interesting. Perhaps you're even more unsuitable than I thought. That night, Bella had packed her bags and left Miami without explanation. She'd driven north until she ran out of gas in a small town outside Jacksonville, where she discovered she was pregnant and finally understood why her magic had been so volatile lately. The twins had been born during a thunderstorm that knocked out power for 3 counties. Emma had come first, quiet and observant, while Lucas had arrived 20 minutes later with his lungs at full volume. Both had been born with their father's gray eyes and their mother's gift for making plants grow. So let me get this straight, Sophia said, having paused her recording to process this information. The Ice Queen threatened you, you fled like Cinderella at midnight, and you've been hiding in mom life ever since? That's a gross oversimplification, but essentially yes. Bella picked at her chuo, no longer hungry. I kept telling myself I'd reach out when the kids were older. When I was more established. When I could face Margaret Sterling as an equal instead of a scared 23-year-old. And now? Now he's seen them, and there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Bella gestured at the jungle surrounding them. My magic knows something's changed. It's been like this since we got home from the airport. Sophia repositioned her phone and hit record again. Okay, spell seekers, here's where things get real complicated. Because hypothetically speaking, what do you do when the father of your children is back in your life, but his family literally threatened to destroy you? As if responding to the mention of threats, the peace lily in the corner grew 3 inches and sprouted 5 new blooms. Bella's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. The twins are asking about the tall tree man from the airport. What should I tell them? Before she could respond, another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Margaret Sterling. We need to talk. The peace lily immediately doubled in size. Oh, hell no, Sophia said, reading over Bella's shoulder. She did not just materialize with perfect timing like some kind of Disney villain. But Bella was staring at a third message that had just appeared. This is Alexander Sterling. Please call me. We need to discuss our children. Our children. Every plant in the apartment rustled as if moved by an unfelt breeze, and Bella realized that no amount of distance or time was going to protect her from this conversation. Alexander Sterling knew he was a father. Margaret Sterling was apparently still tracking her moves, and 2 4-year-olds were asking questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Soph, she said quietly, I think I need a lawyer. Sophia was already pulling up contacts on her phone. Honey, I think you need a whole team. But first, she held up her TikTok recording. Can I at least post this? Because this is peak drama content, and my engagement has been suffering lately. Outside, thunder rumbled despite the clear sky, and every plant in the apartment turned toward the windows as if sensing an approaching storm. The Margaret Sterling kind of storm. Back in his penthouse, Alex stared at the text he'd sent to Bella's number, obtained through methods he preferred not to examine too closely, and wondered if he'd made the right choice reaching out so directly. His home office was now unrecognizable. Mrs. Chen had helped him move the glass desk to storage and replace it with a child-sized table and chairs set that Amazon had delivered with impressive speed. Educational posters covered the walls, the alphabet, numbers, planets, and dinosaurs. He'd ordered them all, unsure what 4-year-olds were supposed to be learning. A stack of parenting books towered on his coffee table, each bookmarked and highlighted like preparation for a board presentation. He'd read 3 chapters of What to Expect the Toddler Years, and felt more confused than when he'd started. His phone buzzed. Not Bella, his mother. "Alexander, darling, we need to discuss recent developments. I'll be in Miami tomorrow." His wolf bristled with sudden unease. His mother never came to Miami unless something was seriously wrong. And her timing, just hours after his airport encounter, felt too convenient to be coincidental. Alex looked around his transformed office, his father command center, and felt the first stirrings of real fear. Not for himself, but for 2 small children who'd called him a tree and climbed him like playground equipment. Children his mother knew nothing about. Yet. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found what he was looking for. The private investigation firm Sterling Industries kept on retainer for sensitive corporate matters. If his mother was coming to Miami, she already knew about the twins. Which meant she'd been watching, waiting, planning. And that terrified him more than any boardroom confrontation ever could. Because Margaret Sterling didn't just win, she annihilated her opposition. And Bella and the children were about to become her opposition. Alex stared at his reflection in the darkening windows, crumbs finally washed from his hair, wearing a "World's Best Dad" t-shirt that felt like false advertising. He had less than 24 hours to figure out how to protect a family he'd just discovered from a mother who'd never met a problem she couldn't eliminate. The father command center suddenly felt less like preparation and more like a war room. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Bella. "We need to meet. But not alone. I'm bringing backup." Alex smiled grimly. Smart woman. He'd need backup too. Chapter 3. Alexander Sterling had acquired companies across 3 continents, negotiated billion-dollar mergers, and once talked a hostile takeover target into surrender over a single lunch meeting. But standing outside Coral Gables Park at 7:30 in the morning, holding a carrier of premium coffee and organic juice boxes that cost more than most people's grocery budget, he felt like he was about to attempt his most challenging negotiation yet. Convincing the mother of his children to let him be part of their lives. His private investigator had tracked Bella to this address, but when Alex arrived at the apartment complex, a helpful neighbor with paint-stained fingers had informed him that the pretty lady with the twins went to the park with those kids who make the flowers grow funny. That last comment had made his wolf sit up and take notice. Now, watching from behind a cluster of royal palms, Alex spotted them immediately. Bella sat on a bench near the playground, laptop balanced on her knees, occasionally glancing up to monitor her children. She wore a simple sundress and sandals, her dark hair caught up in a messy bun, and looked like she belonged in the peaceful morning setting. The twins, however, were causing what could only be described as botanical chaos. Emma knelt in the flower bed beside the playground, her small hands pressed against the soil. As Alex watched, a cluster of marigolds suddenly burst into full bloom, their orange petals unfurling with unnatural speed. She moved to the next patch, and the same thing happened, winter-dormant plants awakening to her touch like spring had arrived in fast forward. "Emma, Mija, remember what we talked about," Bella called without looking up from her laptop. "Gentle touches only." "I am being gentle, Mama." Emma protested, then immediately proved this wrong by accidentally supercharging a patch of hibiscus bushes into a riot of red blooms. Meanwhile, Lucas had discovered that the monkey bars presented an interesting challenge when you possessed supernatural strength. Instead of hanging from the bars, he was gripping them hard enough to leave small indentations in the metal. A mother pushing her toddler on the nearby swings kept glancing over with concern. "Lucas," Bella called, still typing, "normal kid strength, remember? But it's more fun this way." Lucas swung from bar to bar, each grip leaving tiny fingerprint dents. "Look how fast I can go." Alex's wolf whined with a mixture of pride and terror. His cubs were magnificent, and completely out of control. He took a deep breath and approached the bench, his expensive coffee and juice boxes held like a peace treaty. Bella sensed his presence before he spoke, her shoulders tensing as she looked up from her laptop. Alexander. Her voice was carefully neutral, but he caught the slight tremor underneath. Bella. He gestured toward the carrier. I brought coffee. And he held up the juice boxes, which featured organic fruit blends and cost $8 each. These. She stared at the juice boxes for a long moment. Those cost more than my kid's entire lunch budget. Is that bad? It's very you. But she accepted the coffee he offered, inhaling the rich aroma with obvious appreciation. Ethiopian single origin? You remembered. I remember a lot of things. She glanced toward the playground where Lucas was now hanging upside down from bars that were starting to show stress fractures. Kids, come here. We have a visitor. Emma looked up from her flower garden, soil smudged across her cheek, and immediately brightened. Tree man. Lucas dropped from the monkey bars with supernatural grace and launched himself across the playground. You came back. Are we playing the climbing game again? Lucas, no, Bella started, but she was too late. Lucas reached Alex at full speed and immediately began scaling him like he was indeed a piece of playground equipment. Small hands with superhuman grip found purchase on Alex's belt, his jacket, his shoulders. Within seconds, Lucas was perched on Alex's shoulders like he'd conquered Mount Everest. I told you he was the tallest tree, Lucas announced to everyone within hearing distance. And he still smells like home. Alex's wolf practically purred at those words, but his human brain was focused on the concerning ease with which a 4-year-old had just climbed him. Lucas, that was very impressive. Mama says I'm too strong sometimes, Lucas confided, settling more comfortably on Alex's shoulders. But you don't seem too bothered. Because I'm a werewolf and you're apparently inheriting superhuman strength, Alex thought but didn't say. Instead, he carefully lifted Lucas down and handed him one of the ridiculously expensive juice boxes. Ooh, fancy, Emma said, appearing at his elbow with dirt-covered hands and a businesslike expression. What flavor? Acai berry and, Alex checked the label. Superfoods blend? That's okay, I guess. Lucas likes anything purple. Emma accepted her juice box, mango and turmeric, and studied Alex with the intense focus of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. Are you really our dad? The question hit him like a physical blow. Bella made a strangled sound, and Alex felt his wolf's emotions surge, pride, protectiveness, and a desperate need to claim these perfect little creatures as his own. Yes, he said simply. I am. Emma nodded as if this confirmed her working hypothesis. That explains the smell thing. And why Lucas gets excited around you. He only gets that way around Pac. Emma, Bella warned. What? It's true. Remember when we met Mrs. Martinez's nephew who's a werewolf? Lucas did the same happy wiggling. Alex blinked. Mrs. Martinez's nephew is half-wolf on his father's side, Emma said matter-of-factly. His human side is stronger though, so he only shifts during full moons. Lucas shifts when he gets really excited or scared. Show him, Lucas. Emma, no. Bella shot to her feet, laptop sliding off her knees. But Lucas was already bouncing with excitement, his gray eyes beginning to glow with an inner light that Alex recognized all too well. You want to see? I can do ears and a tail. Watch. Lucas, absolutely not, Bella started. Too late. Lucas's excitement reached a critical threshold, and his partial shift began in broad daylight, in the middle of a public park, with at least a dozen other families within view. Small ears began to elongate and point, his canine teeth extended, and the beginning of a tail started to emerge. Several nearby parents turned to stare, and a woman pushing a stroller actually pulled out her phone. Alex moved faster than human reflexes should have allowed, scooping Lucas up and diving behind the nearest hot dog stand just as the little boy's transformation reached its most obvious stage. He pressed Lucas against his chest, using his own body to shield the partial shift from view. Deep breaths, buddy, Alex whispered, his own wolf responding to his cub's distress. Feel my heartbeat. Match your breathing to mine. Lucas buried his face against Alex's shirt, his small body trembling as he fought to control the shift. I'm sorry. Mama says I can't do this around other people. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Alex rubbed soothing circles on Lucas's back, the same instinctive motion his own father had never bothered to learn. Just breathe with me. From behind the hot dog stand, he could hear chaos erupting on the playground. Parents were shouting, children were screaming with delight, and over it all, Emma's voice rang out clear as a bell. Step right up. See the amazing dancing squirrel show. Only $1. Alex peered around the corner of the hot dog stand and nearly choked on his own tongue. Every squirrel in the park, and there were dozens, had joined what could only be described as a synchronized dance performance. They stood on their hind legs, swaying in perfect rhythm, their fluffy tails moving in coordinated waves. A few had even formed a conga line around the fountain. Bella stood in the center of it all, her eyes closed in concentration, her hands moving in subtle patterns that guided the impromptu wildlife show. Her magic was strong enough to control every small creature in the vicinity, creating the most spectacular distraction Alex had ever witnessed. And Emma, entrepreneurial genius that she was, had set up shop by the playground entrance and was actually collecting dollar bills from amazed parents who thought they were witnessing some kind of park entertainment. My sister's really good with animals, Lucas said proudly, his shift finally under control. And making money. Mama says she's going to be a CEO someday. Alex looked down at his son, who had just nearly revealed their supernatural nature to half of Miami, and felt something in his chest crack open. Not break. Expand. She's remarkable, he said. You both are. Lucas beamed up at him. Mama says we're special. But we have to be careful because not everyone understands special. The dancing squirrels were reaching their finale, a spectacular formation that spelled out, "Thank you," in furry cursive. The crowd burst into applause, and Emma took a theatrical bow before quickly pocketing her earnings. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced with the confidence of a born performer, the amazing Rodriguez wildlife experience will return tomorrow, same time, same place. Tell your friends. Bella opened her eyes, swayed slightly from the magical exertion, and immediately started scanning the crowd for her children. Her gaze found Alex and Lucas behind the hot dog stand, and her expression shifted from relief to panic to something that might have been gratitude. The squirrels dispersed to their normal squirrel activities, and the crowd began to wander away, still chattering excitedly about the unexpected entertainment. Emma skipped over to join them behind the hot dog stand, her pocket jingling with coins. I made $17, she announced proudly. And Mrs. Patterson wants to book us for her grandson's birthday party. Emma, Bella said weakly, we've talked about this. No booking the animal shows for parties. But $17, Mama. That's enough to buy the good mac and cheese. The organic kind that doesn't taste like cardboard. Alex felt another piece of his heartbreak. His daughter was proud of $17. His cubs were eating discount mac and cheese while he owned 3 homes and a wine cellar worth more than most people's annual salaries. Perhaps, he said carefully, we could discuss some financial arrangements. Bella's expression immediately shuddered. We don't need your money. But you clearly need help with. He gestured vaguely at the twins, who were now comparing notes on their respective supernatural incidents. I can handle my children. Our children, Alex corrected gently. And that partial shift could have exposed all of us. Lucas needs training. Emma needs to learn control. They both need. They need stability, Bella interrupted. They need routine. They need a mother who doesn't run away when things get complicated. The accusation hung in the air between them. Alex's wolf bristled, but his human side recognized the hurt underneath her words. I didn't know, he said quietly. If I had known. You would have what? Fought your mother? Chosen us over Sterling Industries? Bella shook her head. You live in a different world, Alex. A world where problems get solved with money and lawyers and corporate influence. My children can't be another acquisition. That's not what I... Mama, Emma interrupted, tugging on Bella's dress. The tree man brought us expensive juice. And he smells like Lucas when Lucas is happy. I think he wants to be Pack. Out of the mouths of babes. Alex crouched down to Emma's level, meeting those serious brown eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. I would very much like to be Pack, if your mama will let me. Emma considered this with 4-year-old gravity. Do you know how to play hide and seek? I could learn. Do you know about magic flowers and wolf boys and squirrel shows? I'm learning about those too. Do you have somewhere we could practice being wolves without scaring the regular people? Alex glanced up at Bella, who was watching this exchange with an expression he couldn't quite read. I might have some ideas about that. Lucas, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this conversation, suddenly piped up. Does this mean we get to keep you? The question was so innocent, so hopeful, that Alex felt his composure crack entirely. I would very much like that. But do you promise not to leave like Mama's other boyfriends? Lucas. Bella gasped. What? They always leave when they find out about the magic stuff. Marcus ran away when Emma made his car covered in flowers. And David stopped calling after I accidentally bent his golf club. Alex looked between his children, these perfect, powerful, complicated little beings, and their mother, who was clearly struggling to raise them alone while managing supernatural abilities that could expose them all. I promise, he said solemnly, that I will never run away because of magic. I understand magic. I understand wolves. And I understand that family doesn't abandon each other. He stood up and met Bella's eyes directly. We need to talk. Really talk. About their training, their safety, their future. I know you don't trust me, and I know you have reasons. But our children are developing powers they don't understand, and they need guidance we can provide together. Bella was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma carefully count her squirrel show earnings while Lucas practiced hanging from a tree branch with one hand. One conversation, she said finally. But not here. Somewhere private. And I choose the location. Fair enough. And Alex? She fixed him with a stare that reminded him exactly why he'd fallen for her in the first place. If you hurt them, if you make them promises you can't keep, if you disappear when things get difficult, if you let your mother anywhere near them, I will unleash every ounce of magic I possess to make sure you regret it. Are we clear? His wolf recognized the threat and respected it. His human side felt something that might have been relief. Bella was fierce when it came to protecting their cubs. That was exactly what they needed. Crystal clear, he said. I want to be their father, Bella. Really be their father. Not just provide support from a distance. I want Sunday morning pancakes and school pickups and bedtime stories about magic wolves who save the day. Emma perked up at this. Do you know any good wolf stories? I know a few, Alex said solemnly. Stories about wolves who learn to be part of a pack. Stories about cubs who grow up to be strong and brave and kind. Tell us one. Lucas demanded. Bella glanced around the park, where normal families were having normal playground experiences without supernatural wildlife shows or partially shifting children or billionaire wolf fathers trying to buy their way into hearts with overpriced juice boxes. Not here, she said. But maybe somewhere else. Somewhere safe. My penthouse has a private terrace, Alex offered. Soundproofed. No neighbors. The twins could practice their abilities without worrying about exposure. Absolutely not. I'm not bringing my children into your world. Then we'll find neutral ground. Somewhere that belongs to neither of us. Emma had finished counting her money and was now studying the two adults with the shrewd expression of someone far older than 4. Are you going to be fighting a lot? Because Lucas gets upset when people fight, and when Lucas gets upset, he shifts, and when he shifts in public, Mama has to make the squirrels dance, and I can only charge so much for squirrel shows before people get suspicious. Alex stared at his daughter. How are you 4 years old? I read a lot, Emma said matter-of-factly. And I pay attention. Mama says paying attention is how you survive. The weight of that statement, the idea that his 4-year-old daughter already understood survival, settled heavily in Alex's chest. These children had been living with secrets, with constant vigilance, with the knowledge that being themselves could put them in danger. And their mother had been carrying that burden alone. Bella, he said quietly, we really do need to talk. She looked at him for a long moment, then at their children, then back at him. Tonight. After they're asleep. There's a 24-hour diner on Calle Ocho. Versailles. Meet me there at 9. I'll be there. And Alex? Come alone. If I see any Sterling Industries security, any private investigators, any hint that this is anything other than two parents trying to figure out what's best for their children, I disappear. And this time, you won't find us. Alex's wolf whined at the threat, but he nodded. Just me. I promise. Emma tugged on his hand. Tree man, Dad, will you really tell us wolf stories? Dad. The word hit him like a lightning bolt, and Alex had to swallow hard before he could speak. As many as you want to hear. Good, she said with satisfaction. Because I have a lot of questions about pack dynamics and supernatural inheritance patterns and whether werewolf capitalism is a sustainable economic model. Alex looked at Bella, who was trying not to smile. She's been watching too much YouTube. She's brilliant, Alex said. She's 4. She's ours. And for the first time since this whole crazy situation began, Bella didn't argue with that assessment. Lucas had climbed back onto Alex's shoulders, and Emma was holding his hand while chattering about her business plans for expanding the squirrel entertainment empire. For just a moment, they looked like what they were, a family. A complicated, supernatural, slightly chaotic family, but a family nonetheless. Alex's phone buzzed with another text from his mother, but for the first time in his life, he ignored it. Margaret Sterling and her corporate maneuvers could wait. His cubs were more important. Chapter 4. The conversation at Versailles had gone better than Alex had dared hope. Bella had listened, really listened, as he explained about pack dynamics, supernatural training, and the resources he could provide for the twins' development. She'd even agreed to let him introduce Lucas and Emma to his pack, though she'd insisted on being present for every interaction. What Alex had somehow forgotten to mention to anyone was that he was bringing his secret family to James's penthouse on the exact night his beta hosted his monthly Wine and Wine book club. This oversight became apparent the moment they stepped off the elevator into James's immaculate downtown Miami high-rise, where the sounds of heated literary debate echoed through the marble foyer. I maintain that Twilight completely misrepresents vampire culture, a cultured British accent was declaring. The sparkling alone is offensive to anyone with actual supernatural sensibilities. But the emotional depth, another voice protested. What emotional depth? It's all brooding and bad decision-making. Emma perked up immediately. Are they talking about books? I like books. Those are my pack mates, Alex explained to Bella, who was looking increasingly skeptical about this entire arrangement. They're sophisticated supernatural beings who happen to be book enthusiasts. Lucas had already wandered toward the sound of voices, drawn by curiosity and the scent of other wolves. They smell like you but different. Like, family but not family? Pack, Alex confirmed. They're pack. Before he could prepare anyone for the impending collision of worlds, Lucas pushed open the door to James's living room and marched inside with the confidence of someone who'd never met a stranger. Hi, he announced to the room at large. I'm Lucas, and that's my sister Emma, and that's my dad the tree man, and that's my mama who makes squirrels dance. The sophisticated literary discussion died an immediate death. 6 impeccably dressed supernatural beings turned to stare at the small boy who'd just introduced himself and his family like he was giving a show and tell presentation. The room fell so silent that Alex could hear his own heartbeat. James Whitmore, Alex's beta and best friend since college, slowly set down his wine glass and fixed Alex with a look that promised serious consequences later. Alexander. What an unexpected surprise. James, Alex said weakly. I forgot about book club. You forgot about, James's voice climbed an octave before he visibly controlled himself. I see. Emma had followed her brother into the room and was now studying the assembled pack with scientific fascination. You're all very fancy, she observed. And you smell like wolves, but you're sitting in chairs like humans. That's interesting. Emma, Bella said from behind Alex, inside voice, please. But Emma was just getting started. She pointed at Marcus, James's second-in-command, who was wearing what appeared to be a $1,000 suit. You have really shiny shoes. Do you polish them yourself or do you have people for that? Marcus blinked. I have people. That's very fancy. Emma moved on to the next pack member. And you have very white teeth. Do you brush them 3 times a day like the dentist says? 4 times, admitted David, looking slightly dazed. Very responsible. Emma nodded approvingly before turning to the only female pack member present. And you smell like flowers and leather. That's a nice combination. Most people just smell like one thing. Sarah, James's girlfriend and the pack's resident tech genius, looked charmed despite herself. Thank you. It's lavender and, well, leather. Lucas, meanwhile, had gravitated toward James, who was still processing the appearance of children in his carefully curated adult space. Are you my dad's friend? Lucas asked, tilting his head with wolf-like curiosity. I am his beta, James said carefully. What's a beta? It means I'm his second-in-command. His assistant, in a way. Lucas's eyes lit up. Like a best friend who helps with work? That's actually a remarkably accurate description. Cool. Can you teach me how to make fart noises with my armpits? Dad doesn't know how, and Mama says it's undignified, but I think it's a very important life skill. The sophisticated supernatural beings of Alex's pack stared in collective horror as Lucas demonstrated his armpit technique, producing a sound that would have made a middle school cafeteria proud. Lucas, Bella said weakly. What? It's educational. Listen, he produced another sound, this one even louder. That one was B-flat. James looked at Alex with an expression of pure bewilderment. Your son wants me to teach him armpit music theory. He's very enthusiastic about learning, Alex offered. I can also do this. Lucas proceeded to demonstrate what appeared to be an entire armpit symphony, complete with different pitches and rhythms. Several pack members winced. Emma, not to be outdone by her brother's performance, had discovered James's extensive library and was running her fingers along the book spines. You have a lot of books about business and wolves and... She paused. Why do you have 3 copies of 50 Shades of Grey? Emma. Bella yelped. Book club selection, James said faintly. We're very thorough in our literary analysis. Oh. Do you also have children's books? Because Lucas can't read very well yet, but he likes pictures. Sarah jumped in before anyone could process the image of supernatural bachelors discussing erotic literature in academic terms. We could get some children's books. What do you like to read about? Wolves, mostly. And science. And business. Emma paused thoughtfully. Do you think werewolf capitalism is a sustainable economic model? The entire room went silent again. She watches a lot of YouTube, Bella explained apologetically. I'm beginning to see that, James murmured. The doorbell chose that moment to ring, cutting through the surreal domestic scene. James glanced at Alex with confusion. Are you expecting someone else? Alex's blood turned to ice. He'd only told one other person about this meeting, and that had been a mistake born of habit and corporate conditioning. Oh, no. Oh, no, what? Bella demanded. The sound of heels clicking on marble echoed through the penthouse, followed by James's housekeeper's apologetic voice. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore, but she insisted. Margaret Sterling swept into the room like a force of nature dressed in Chanel. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her expression was icily composed, and her presence immediately dominated the space in a way that made every wolf present straighten to attention. "Alexander," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that had been closing corporate deals for 40 years. "I believe we need to discuss recent developments." Emma looked up from her book browsing and studied the new arrival with frank curiosity. "Are you the scary grandma?" Margaret's perfectly composed expression flickered. "I beg your pardon?" "Mama said Dad's mother is very scary and has lots of power and doesn't like us very much." "Are you her?" "Emma," Bella said urgently, stepping forward. "That's enough." But Emma was on a roll. She walked directly up to Margaret Sterling, this woman who had terrified senators and made CEOs weep, and tilted her head with 4-year-old directness. "You have very sad eyes," Emma said matter-of-factly. "And your aura is all pokey and dark around the edges. Like you're hurt but you don't want anyone to know. Do you need a hug?" Margaret Sterling, who had faced down hostile corporate takeovers and government investigations without blinking, stared down at the small girl who just offered to hug her. What? Hugs help when people are sad. Mama says hugs are like magic for feelings." Emma reached up and patted Margaret's arm gently. "You smell like sadness and expensive perfume." "The perfume is nice, but the sadness makes me want to help." Alex watched his mother's face cycle through confusion, shock, and something that might have been grief. She looked down at Emma's small hand on her arm like it was the most foreign object she'd ever encountered. "Grandma, your aura is all pokey and sad," Lucas announced, having abandoned his armpit concert to join his sister. "Emma's really good at reading people's feelings. She says I have a chaotic but loving aura, which sounds about right." "You're..." Margaret's voice was barely above a whisper. "You're calling me grandma. Well, you're Dad's mom, right? That makes you our grandma. Unless you don't want to be our grandma, which would be sad because we've never had a grandma before." Emma considered this seriously. "Although Mama's mom visits sometimes, but she lives really far away and sends postcards instead of presents." Margaret Sterling, corporate shark and family matriarch, looked like she'd been hit by a truck driven by pure innocence. James, meanwhile, had been cornered by Lucas, who'd apparently decided that acquiring a sophisticated uncle was his new life goal. "Uncle James," Lucas said, testing out the title, "can you show me how to tie a tie? Dad's ties are always crooked, but yours is perfect." "I'm not your uncle," James protested weakly. "You're Dad's best friend, and best friends are like family, so that makes you my uncle. Can you teach me about wine? Dad says you know about fancy wine. You're 4. You cannot drink wine. Not drink it. Just learn about it. Emma says education is important, and you seem very educated." Lucas paused. "Also, can you show me that armpit thing now? I think the fancy people need to learn about fun." Sarah was openly laughing now, her phone out to record the chaos. This is the best book club ever. Marcus had somehow gotten drawn into a conversation with Emma about investment strategies, while David was attempting to explain the finer points of supernatural literature to a 4-year-old who kept interrupting with questions like, "But why don't the vampires just use sunscreen?" Bella stood in the middle of it all, looking like she'd stumbled into an alternate dimension where sophisticated werewolves discussed armpit music with preschoolers while her children psychoanalyzed billionaire matriarchs. "This is not how I pictured this going," she murmured to Alex. "Your children are..." Alex searched for words. "They're remarkable. They're going to give everyone here a nervous breakdown." But Margaret Sterling was kneeling down to Emma's level now, her perfectly pressed skirt forgotten as she studied her granddaughter's face. "You said I have sad eyes. What else do you see?" Emma considered this with the seriousness of a therapist. "You're scared. But not of us. You're scared of being left out. And you're angry, but the angry is covering up the hurt. You hurt because you thought we were gone forever, didn't you?" Margaret's composure finally cracked. How could you possibly know that?" "Magic," Emma said simply. "Mama says I see feelings like colors, and yours are all mixed up like a sad rainbow." But there's love in there too. It's just buried under all the scary stuff. I thought you were dead, Margaret whispered, and for the first time in Alex's memory, his mother sounded vulnerable. When Isabella disappeared, I had investigators try to track her down. They told me she'd lost the pregnancy. That there were no children. The room went deadly quiet. Even Lucas stopped his armpit demonstration to stare at his grandmother. You thought we died? Emma asked, her voice small. I spent 5 years believing I'd lost the chance to know you. That my actions had cost this family. Margaret's voice broke entirely. I thought I'd killed my own grandchildren through cruelty. Bella sank onto James's expensive sofa like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. You thought they were dead? My investigators showed me medical records. A miscarriage at 12 weeks. I believed. Margaret looked up at Alex with eyes full of tears. I believed I'd destroyed everything. But we're not dead, Lucas said helpfully. We're right here being very alive and loud. Emma walked over to Margaret and, without asking permission, climbed into her lap. You can't have sad feelings about dead people when the people aren't actually dead. That's just silly. Margaret Sterling, who'd never held a child in her adult life, awkwardly wrapped her arms around her granddaughter. I suppose it is rather silly. Besides, Emma continued, settling comfortably against her grandmother's designer suit, now you can learn all about us. Like how Lucas can make really impressive fart sounds and I can make plants grow and we both sometimes turn into wolves when we get excited. You turn into, Margaret started. Just partially, Alex said quickly. They're still learning control. I can show you. Lucas offered brightly. Want to see my ears? Lucas, no, Bella said automatically. But it's Grandma. She should know about the wolf stuff. James cleared his throat. Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private? Good idea, Alex agreed. James, could we use your office? But Emma had already made herself comfortable in Margaret's lap and was patting her grandmother's cheek gently. You don't have to be scary anymore, Grandma. We're here now, and we're not going anywhere. Right, Mama? All eyes turned to Bella, who looked like she was processing 17 different emotions at once. She glanced between her children, who'd somehow charmed an entire pack of sophisticated werewolves and turned a corporate ice queen into putty, and Margaret Sterling, who was clutching Emma like she was afraid the child might disappear. Right, Bella said finally. We're not going anywhere. Lucas cheered and went back to teaching James armpit music, while Emma began explaining to Margaret about the proper care and feeding of magical plants. The pack had given up all pretense of sophistication and were now fully engaged in conversations about everything from superhero preferences to the best brands of juice boxes. Alex looked around the room, at his mother holding his daughter, at his son turning his beta into a collaborator in juvenile humor, at Bella slowly relaxing into the chaos, and felt something settle in his chest. This wasn't how he'd planned any of this. But somehow, it was exactly what they all needed. Even if James would never live down the sight of him making fart noises with a 4-year-old. Alexander, Margaret said quietly, still holding Emma, we have a great deal to discuss. We do, he agreed. But perhaps, she added, watching Lucas attempt to teach sophisticated werewolves playground games, we could start with the important things. Like whether these children would be interested in having a grandmother who's very good at buying presents. Emma perked up immediately. What kind of presents? Margaret Sterling smiled for the first time in Alex's recent memory. Whatever kind my granddaughter wants. And just like that, the Sterling family dynamics shifted forever. Even if it did happen to the soundtrack of armpit music. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to be the first to get notified when the part 2 of this story drops.